The parents bring them there. This isn't like they all, like, the drag queens come to school, steal your children, put them under their arm, and run to the local gay nightclub. I want to show you Matt Walsh's reaction to the Club Q shooting. You know, this was 3 days after the shooting. He had some comments on it, and I wanted to talk about those comments. Let's just watch it. I don't know what other intro I'm supposed to give it. He had some comments. He had some thoughts.
Family-friendly drag shows, quote-unquote, have two purposes. One, from the drag queen's perspective, is to satisfy their fetish for cross-dressing in front of children. The other, on a more macro level, is to indoctrinate children into queer theory. To put it simply, the point of Drag Queen Story Hour and the supposed family-friendly drag shows is to turn your children queer. That is the goal. And whenever you say that, what I just said right there is going to be clipped by Media Matters. Hello, everybody, on Twitter. The people who invented it stated explicitly that that is the point, to help children live queerly. That's their quote. And the thing about the left is that what they believe and what they do, all of it is so horrifying, so perverse, so degraded, that if you just quote them, then you somehow sound like the crazy one. If you quote what they are saying, it sounds crazy just to say it out loud because it's so horrifying. Yet it's true. And this is the reason the left cares so much about this, and they defend it so vigorously. Because according to the left, think about this. According to the left, the drag queen child combination has become dangerous. They say it's a lightning rod for violent backlash, right? That's what they say. And it's greatly exaggerated, of course. Mostly it's invented out of whole cloth, actually. But even by their version of events, if it's causing this much chaos and violence, why do you insist on continuing to do it? If according to you, it's like putting people's lives at risk, if the effort to have men cross-dress in front of children is putting people's lives at risk, why are you still doing it? Is it that important to you? Now, as always, they try to flip the burden around on us. They demand that we explain why we object to children being exposed to drag queens, and we can explain it, and we have, and we will continue to, because it's very easy to explain. Drag is inherently sexual and ideological. It is burlesque, and it's not appropriate to bring your child to a burlesque show. You disgusting freaks.
Okay. It took 3 days. It took 3 days for him to call the people who got shot freaks. 3 days. 3 days. Fucking hell. It took 3 days for him to call the place that was hit by a terrorist attack to call them all freaks. 3 days. That's all it took him. There were no thoughts and prayers for Matt Walsh. There was no just disdain. I'm not supposed to like laugh or smile or like anything at this, but just the ridiculousness of this is insane. It's just so blatant. They just don't care anymore. And because Matt Walsh knows he can get away with it. He can get away with calling these people freaks and saying, hey, if you want to stop getting murdered, maybe stop doing these drag performances. Maybe stop doing Drag Queen Story Hour friendly or child friendly drag show if you don't want to get shot and murdered. It seems to be he has more concern about looking at this event from, man, we better stop the child drag shows, better stop Drag Queen Story Hour, than, man, we better stop the terrorist attacks by changing our rhetoric, by changing how we talk about queer people and calling them all pedophiles and groomers and saying they're gonna turn kids gay. In fact, he doubles down on the language and makes the bogus claim that the point of Drag Queen Story Hour and the point of these child-friendly drag shows is to make kids queer. That's not the point. If you listen to these performers talk about why they do it, if you listen to why to these club owners or these donut shop owners or wherever they host these events, you ask them why they do it. They don't say, oh, we're trying to make the kids gay. Because the thing is about these Drag Queen Story Hours and these child-friendly drag events where people are saying they're preying upon these children, the parents bring them there. This isn't like they all, like, the drag queens come to school, steal your children, put them under their arm, and run to the local gay nightclub, right? And then start dressing them up in drag, saying, perform for me at gunpoint. That's not what's happening. What's happening is parents are taking their children to these child-friendly events where the vast majority of them are age-appropriate. Of course, you're going to see the nitpicked examples, and social media is going to concentrate on the inappropriate examples, which do exist, of course, like also exist in what's supposed to be child-friendly concerts where they end up saying vulgar or sexual themes during that. A lot of parents bring their children to shows that they shouldn't, that are straight parents. Do you think you should bring your kids to like a Kid Rock concert when he's talking about breaking the age of consent in his music? You think you should bring your kids to Metallica concert, these hard rock concerts that have songs about sex, or Rolling Stones? A lot of parents would love to bring their kids to those concerts, and nobody bats an eye. Nobody bats an eye. There's a difference in standard. Now, if you hold a consistent standard amongst all these shows, fair. But you can't pretend that inherently, as Matt Walsh does here, that drag shows are inherently sexual. The only thing that needs to exist for it to be a drag performance is for you to bend gender norms in the performance. That's all you need to do. That's it. So if I was to put on a dress and then continue streaming, I could call this a drag performance. Does that make this stream now sexual because I put on a dress? If I started putting flowers in my hair, maybe add some lipstick, does that now make this sexual? Or am I now just wearing different clothing? It really, at the end of the day, depends on what type of clothing they're wearing and what the type of performance is. But you could 100% have child-friendly drag shows. I've seen many child-friendly drag shows, both online and here's a great example. I talk about this all the time. I always bring this up. It's a great example of a performer showing what a child-friendly drag show looks like. Let's see if we can bring it up quickly. Of course, my computer, once again. Drag Queen Story Hour speech. It's not coming up anymore. I don't think it's up anymore. I used to play this speech on stream. But if you look at any of these events, like look at this event, you can see it right there. Does that look like sexual to you? Why? Because they have poofy red hair? Because they're wearing a green dress? To me, it doesn't look sexual. Their parents are there, the children are there, and they're reading a storybook. He says that this is a fetish, but what fetish is being fulfilled here? This isn't the fetish of all these performers. For a lot of these performers, they really, really, really do care about the children. They want to read them a book, and they want to give them an inclusive experience. The point behind Drag Queen Story Hour isn't what Matt Walsh says, is to fulfill some fucking fetish, right? Which has never been part of their agenda, and has never been part of their platform, has never been part of any media they put out, like we want to get sexually aroused by children, or there's been no evidence put forward that that's the type of behavior that the organization promotes. The reason they say, if you listen to them, and I'm going to tell you, you should listen to the people who are actually doing the performing instead of Matt Walsh, when talking about what are the performers' intentions. The intention from performers and the intention from the drag event that was going to be hosted at Club Q, because that was going to be hosted on Sunday at the club, is to give children an introduction to the existence of many queer people and queer experiences. It's like, hey, I'm wearing drag, many different types of people exist, and here's a friendly interaction you can have with somebody in drag in this form of queer art. Anyway, here's a children's book, here's I don't know, a cookie, have a nice day. The idea is to make it so when these kids grow up, they don't look at their queer classmates and look at their trans classmates the way that Matt Walsh looks at them. He looks at them like freaks. And the thing is, Matt Walsh is part of the problem. I would say he's actually one of the most evidently, he's one of the most evident parts of the problem. He's on Joe Rogan's podcast, I think 2 weeks ago. I don't know if you guys saw this. He's on Joe Rogan's podcast, and he's talking to Joe Rogan about his documentary. His documentary is called What is a Woman? It basically goes around and asks people what is a woman, and when people like don't give answers that are satisfactory to him, he kind of like, it's like, haha, look at these libtards. That's a general idea behind the documentary. And while discussing the topic that he did a documentary on, that he supposedly spends the vast majority of his time, you know, talking about and morally grandstanding over and protesting about and giving speeches about, and, you know, he's really going out there talking about this quite a lot. Well, on Joe Rogan's podcast, he says that over 1 million children, 1 million, have gotten mastectomies, have had their breasts removed. 1 million young people, 1 million people under the age of 18. That is a massive number. That makes it sound like there's like millions of children having surgery done to remove their breasts. That's an immense number. Joe Rogan's staff immediately Google what the actual number is at the request by Joe Rogan, and the number is actually found to be 1,000. 1 million versus 1,000. He's leading his followers to believe that millions of children are having their breasts cut off and their genitals cut off, and they're being preyed upon by the sexual fetishist freaks in the queer community, and the only way to stop these shootings is to stop that behavior. And he doesn't even know what's going on. He's the one crafting this narrative, and he's completely disconnected. He's making it sound like there's like somewhere in Idaho, there's like giant storage containers just full of like cut off breasts from children. And that's just not real. It just didn't happen. It's just not a thing that's currently going on. It's not a real thing. He just made it up on the spot on one of the most popular podcasts on the planet, listened to by millions of people. And he says, oh, guess I was wrong. This is going to be clipped by Media Matters. And that was that. The person who filmed a documentary about this topic didn't know the basic facts surrounding the topic. And now he's going to be the one to come out and lecture queer people after their community was murdered, that if they want to stop being murdered, they got to get the freaks from within its community. Could you imagine if somebody planted a bomb in the Catholic Church and blew it up, killing like I don't know, 5 people, injuring 25 others? If the reaction I gave on stream was, well, maybe if they stop molesting kids, then like people will stop dying, yeah? In fact, Matt Walsh himself, who, you know, seems to care a lot about children, when he commented on this exact same topic, again, the person who's a warrior for children, making up millions of children having their breasts cut off, when asked about the topic of, you know, pedophilia in the Catholic Church, his response to that is very different to his response to this. He said, there's no pedophilia problem in the Catholic Church. There's a gay priest problem in the Catholic Church. He was somehow able to use the problem of the Catholic Church, which is a historically anti-queer organization, molesting children and covering up the molestation of children. It wasn't that the children were just molested at the Catholic Church. It's that the Catholic Church purposely covered up that molestation and moved the priests that did the molestation around to different communities, who then went on to continue molesting kids. That's not the problem. The problem is the homos. Matt Walsh says he cares about these children, but can't get the facts and the data right about how many children are having these surgeries done. And when it's, you know, when it's in the Catholic Church, it's a completely different narrative. It's a completely different issue. It doesn't deserve as much of his attention. Drag Queen Story Hour is not a sexual fetish group, as he alleges. The Club Q was not hosting an event to indoctrinate people into being gay, trans, queer, or whatever. None of the staff at Club Q or the performers at Club Q wanted to molest children, and parents are always present at Drag Queen Story Hours events. They bring their children there. It's parent and child together as they have a story read to them by a performer. Drag events are not inherently sexual. any more than a Mariah Carey concert or something could be inherently sexual by the fact that she's like wearing a dress. A man wearing a dress is not an inherently sexual thing. The only thing that is inherent there is that it is bending gender norms. It is crazy to me that Matt Walsh only waited 3 days. 3 days. Bodies haven't even been buried yet. For him to start blaming the victims for the massacre. Tim Pool has hit a new low. Matt Walsh has hit a new low. Feels like everybody is hitting a new low on this massacre, man. I don't know what else to say about this. This is fucked. This is fucked.